is a lived experience.
Yeah, carer. Yeah.
Carer.
Yeah.
You will find throughout this next hour, I fumble my words continuously. I don't know why anybody watches me, to be honest. I'm assuming they all come for you, which is why they're all here. So we're going to be talking about dementia and capacity, and as always, we'll probably ramble off into a million different things. If you do ask your questions, if you do have any questions, please send them over to Fumi, and if she thinks they're appropriate, then she'll ask them, I'm sure, on your behalf. So yeah, Richard, do you want to explain to everyone who you are?
Yeah, okay.
And then a little bit about Mum, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. I never thought I'd find myself talking about mental capacity and caring and whatever. Funny enough, I like the law, and I like the law because I worked for many years in a contract management role. For a period of time, for 5 years, I lived in Berlin, and I was the only non-lawyer in an international team of lawyers who I greatly respected, despite the fact that they used to take the mickey out of me no end and sort of say things like, yeah, Richard's not a lawyer, but he makes a reasonable point.
I thought you were going to say a reasonable cup of tea.
In seriousness, it taught what I learned from all of those lawyers, without exception, was to sort of really look at the law, look at the words, understand the deep meaning, because, you know, law and contracts or whatever are very deliberate in the way that they're worded. And so when I came to find myself in a caring role and thinking about things, and as a son and as an attorney with the power of attorney, and started to think about what that meant, you know, I started reading the Mental Capacity Act and reading the bits of the Care Act and thinking, what does that mean?
Because of your history.
In the real world, because that was, if you like, what the job that I did. I'm an engineering by background. I spent a lot of time in procurement and commercial management, and I used to spend a lot of time then, back in my day, teaching project or working with project teams to kind of translate the real world of project delivery into the artificial world, I would dare put it like that, of what the contract says.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of creating that interaction. I'd like to just thank Sam Green, actually, because he made a comment the other day when I put a note out on LinkedIn saying that I was a professional, because I used one of my comments like, I'm not a professional, but it occurs to me that. And Sam said, well, you are a professional because you're answering all the right questions.
Oh, that's the most important thing, yes, answering the right questions.
Later.
I will just jump in there. Sam Green, if you don't know who Sam is, Sam's a barrister at Chambers in London. If you don't follow Sam Green, please do. He puts out some fantastic content and some absolutely awesome videos as well. So if you aren't connected with Sam Green, please connect with him. Your CPD will thank you forevermore if you do.
Yeah. So, sorry, just later my kind of ADHD brain grabbed hold of his thought, actually, though, and I kind of realised he probably meant I was a bit like Eric Morecambe. I got all the right questions, but not necessarily in the right order to make a tune.
I love a little bit of Morecambe.
So yeah, and so Mum, I became carer for Mum, if you like. I'm a carer for Mum because I believe I'm a carer for Mum, because I do lots of things that Mum can't do for herself and hasn't been able to do for herself, which in my view, by definition, makes me a carer, beyond that of a son and so on. But I don't do her care. I don't.
You're not doing the physical.
Yeah, I'm not doing the physical, and I'm not showering her, and I'm not, you know, she's in a care. She's now in a care home because she, you know, so. But all of the arranging, I mean, she wouldn't be there if I didn't pay the bill, and liaise with the GPs and all that sort of thing. So
I think you're right. That definition of care isn't down to wiping bums and getting changed and making sure somebody gets fed. Yeah. I mean, the whole holistic idea of care is huge. it's rarely down to just one person or two people to provide all care. You've got the attorneys, you've got the family, you've got all of those people, and if they're putting in anything into that, and it can just be turning up to mum's house once a week or grandma's house once a week to sit with her and have lunch with her. Well, you're caring for her, you're providing care. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. So it's been a bit of a journey with mum because mum's got now diagnosed with vascular dementia, but she's also a type 1 diabetic.
Okay.
And those two are not good bedfellows at all. See, mum was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 8 years old, apparently, so that's about 20 years ago. No, 50 odd.
We need to get a Montreal cognitive.
50 odd years. And I've had this conversation so many times with clinicians, with social workers, with everybody. But for all of that time, mum effectively managed her diabetes fundamentally by knowing how she felt.
Yeah.
She knew if her blood sugars were low, she knew if her blood sugars were going a bit high. You know, if her blood sugars were getting a bit low, she was always very active. She would say, "Oh, I need to go in and have a cup of tea and a biscuit, and take on some carbohydrate."
They can hear what their body wants.
Yeah, and equally, if she'd overindulged, you know, because she decided to have a piece of the hazelnut meringue gâteau that she'd made us all for dinner, you know, she used to grab hold of her dad, say, "Come on, Don, we're going for a walk," to burn it off. So she knew, and she knew all of the things like, you know, a finger of Kit Kat is 10 grams of carbohydrate, 6 grapes is 10 grams of carbohydrate. So she knew all of those things that, oh, I need to boost my carbohydrates. I'll have a finger of Kit Kat. I'll have,
and that'll be it.
And that will do the adjustment.
Yeah. Intelligent lady, very intelligent.
Yeah, but you know. But
considering we've got computers now. And
well, she was never. That was interesting because she was never taught what diabetics do now. I understand is, you know, they have the monitors and then they dial up what they need.
Get a thing for your arm, can't you?
Yeah, we got some feedback.
We have. And honestly, it's my producer is brilliant.
Why is that happening? Is that still working? No, that's gone now.
It's gone.
That's gone now.
Cool.
So she.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So she could. So she. You know. She managed that very well. And then after she was diagnosed, and we'll come back to some things that happened with relevant conversation before she was diagnosed. I started to see things going wrong. I mean, I literally witnessed her at one time go through all of the right procedure to inject her insulin, with the exception of one thing. She never dialed up any units to put in her leg. So she went through the whole process of screwing the needle on the insulin pen and, you know, wiping her pen with a wipe and putting it in and pressing the button, etc. The only thing that she'd forgotten to do was dial up any insulin in the first place.
At the time when you saw that, did you?
I corrected it.
But did you see that as something's not right?
No. This was after she was. This was after she had been diagnosed.
Oh, okay.
So this is when I'm sort of going through the process of understanding that she's lost the. You know, this is what it comes down to. She'd actually lost capacity to manage her diabetes. You know, diabetes management requires people to be able to sort of monitor their blood sugars, look at their nutrition, look at what they're eating, look at their activity levels, because it's not a perfect science. It's all these things interacting.
Yeah, and it's complex. It's not just a case of I need to make sure I take my tablets twice a day. It depends on lots of different things, like you said. It's not as simple as has mum got capacity to take a medication. Full stop.
So we've been through all of that, and there was one stage when I spotted that these things were going wrong, and we did go and see the GP about it. And there was also with her other medications. You know, I did a bit of an audit over a six week period. and found that she hadn't taken enough of them and she'd taken a few more of them. I mean, none of the medication was like critical.
Yeah.
So it kind of didn't matter.
It still showed that managing that medication wasn't perfect.
And it was a bit cruel, but the GP gave her an option and sort of said, look, either you're going to take on the idea of Richard's going to set up a set box so that you've got it ready for you, etc. Or I'm going to prescribe the chemist, the pharmacist, to do the blister packs. Yeah. So she elected for that one, rather, you know. But before that, it was, I can do it. I've been doing this for years, you know. And that's this kind of change in perception, the belief in the ability to carry on doing things that you've always done is there, and being able to describe the things that you've always done is there. Just you can't walk the walk. Yeah. Any longer. You can talk the talk, but you can't walk the walk.
But we spoke about this, didn't we, just before we came on, that some people with living with a diagnosis of dementia understand their dementia and understand the impact and what that's having on their life, and other people like your mum, unfortunately, aren't able to understand that they've got dementia, aren't able to understand that there's changes happening.
Yeah.
And because of that, they then struggle more. Because, you know, well, I'm fine managing my medication. Well, you're not, and look, here's the evidence. Yeah, but I am fine. I mean, every time somebody starts at Nellie Sports, the first thing we teach them, and this is really crass, I suppose, in some ways, but we teach everyone, everybody lies. Because I think if you work from that perspective, then you're always being critical of what you're being told and what you're thinking. And I don't mean we explain it further, we explain that it's not lying, but we get people with an illness that aren't able to tell the truth because they don't know, and their illness is preventing them, so their illness is making them lie as such. Then we get people that lie because they want to protect themselves. Oh, I can do this because I don't want to look like I can't do it. And then we get people that lie that are doing it for nefarious reasons. We do get family members and attorneys and all sorts of different people that are lying because they're trying to steal mum's money or whatever else. But if you always look at it as taking everything you're being told with a pinch of salt and trying to be critical about it, then you can understand it. And that, what you're talking about is exactly that. Mum, she's not lying, but her illness is preventing her from being able to understand.
And it was, you know, it was really tough. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not a perfect person by a long shot, and I found it so annoying and frustrating because it was like you're in denial, and she would say, you know, you're calling me a liar. Well, you know, the evidence is there. Your blood sugars are up at 20. Right, you know, what have you had to eat? And she started, and I got her to start writing things down, and she didn't want to do that. And then all of a sudden, you know, well, what have you had for breakfast? Well, I had this, and then, oh, and I had a toast of marmalade. Well, that would have done it.
But as you're talking, there was a TV show years ago, something like called Fat Person, Thin Person. And they took somebody that was excessively overweight and somebody that was excessively slim. And at the end of day one or something, or the end of the first week, they had these horrible tubes and they'd put in the amount, all the food that this person had eaten and all the food this person had eaten. And they'd say, well, have you overeaten this week? Have you undereaten this week? No, I've stuck to the plan, I've eaten everything. And they hadn't. And, you know, the overweight person would have eaten half as much as they should, and the underweight person would have eaten a tenth of what they should. They were in denial. But with your mum, it's not denial as in I'm just going.
No, it's not.
It's the illness causing it, isn't it?
It is the illness, but it's also the change in what else is going to happen afterwards. Because that example of having a piece of toast and marmalade. I mean, Mum made marmalade for years. Yeah. Right.
Homemade.
Paddington's got nothing on my mum. Right. Tell you. So she's made homemade marmalade for years, and I've taken it on now. Right.
Good for you.
But she would always have, you know, quite often, a piece of toast with a scrape of marmalade on it. You know, a scrape. I'd pile it on, but she had a scrape. But then after that, you see, she'd be out in the garden weeding for 3 hours or whatever.
Of course.
And then, of course, that activity is gone.
So the
carbohydrate intake is being taken, but the activity that burns it off is stopped.
Was she realised? Was she?
No.
And she was. That's what.
And so she wasn't making the connection between I'm no longer as active as I used to be, and therefore I'm not burning off the carbohydrate that I used to do.
Yeah.
But in some ways, I'm still taking on my same diet.
Because I mean, that in itself is really interesting, because we all kind of go through that issue at some point in our lives. We all go from being very active in our 20s and we can eat whatever we want, and then we get to 30s and end up in a management role and sitting on a bum. But we a lot of us, some of us don't. Most of us realise, actually, I'm not as active as I was, so therefore I need to start eating less, or I need to curb what I'm eating, change what I'm eating, things like that. So it's not unusual for people to go through that situation, but your mum wasn't understanding and wasn't able, where everyone else that goes through that situation is able to connect those up. Your mum wasn't able to connect up the consequences of
that. I mean, my mum was always active, right, you know, up to her early 80s. You know, she was... And it was as the dementia, became more and more apparent as it developed, that she became less and less active. You know, it sort of the two things went together.
I know you spoke about, before we came on, you were talking about the diabetes nurses said that she did have capacity to manage her diabetes medication at the time, but they wouldn't know that. They wouldn't know about her going out and doing 3 hours gardening.
Well,
that's really important. That just that one scenario feeds into the fact that she probably lacked capacity to manage her diabetes, because she wasn't able to put those two things together.
Well, this is where I've had both kind of good and not so good experiences, bad experience. So after I realised that the wheel had come off with the diabetes management a bit, and I'd witnessed these problems. She'd forgotten to do her injections or whatever. So the GP referred her into the district nurses, for the district nurses to come and look at, to support her with her insulin injections. And at that time, she was on 2 injections a day, one in the morning, one in the late afternoon. And they started to come in, etc. And their attitude was, we just need to get her back on track.
Yeah.
Okay.
Short term,
okay. So, and I got a phone call one day from one of the district nurses saying, right, so the thing is actually your mum doesn't meet the criteria for district nurse support because she's not housebound. Oh, okay. So, if you need this support to continue, you need to go and obtain the social care support, right? Well, if you go to social care providers, they won't do anything that's got a clinical part of it. They will not involve themselves in things that involve sticking needles in people.
No.
Right?
Because their insurance would not be happy with that. So
there was that. And then one day, I'd got a door camera and an app on the phone, and I was up actually at my wife's parents', and I thought, that's a bit weird. I haven't seen the district nurses come in. So I phoned Mum and I said, have the district nurses been? She said, no. I said, oh, they're not coming. Okay. So I phoned up the community access point and I said, no one's been to my mum this afternoon, what's going on? Oh, it's got a note on file, discuss with her about that she was capable of looking after her own injections, etc., etc. The key word there: no concerns raised by the patient. Right. Okay. So later that evening, she phoned me. She says, "I can't get my blood sugars are low. Can't get my blood sugars up. Can't get my blood sugars up." So to cut a long story short, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when the district nurses called her to check that she'd done her injections, her blood sugars were 7. At 4 o'clock the following morning, when she was discharged from the ambulance outside of A&E, having not actually got into A&E because she'd sat in the ambulance then outside A&E for 5 hours, her blood sugars were 7, but in the meantime she'd had over 150 grams of carbohydrate, which equates to about 12 units of insulin. So basically that accounted for the overdose that she'd given herself. So after that, it was kind of proof that she wasn't capable of managing the process without supervision. And that, so then it became that they would supervise and check and keep reminding her, no, you need to do this next, you need to do that next, and you need to do the next thing next. Eventually they took it over because she also developed diabetic neuropathy in her fingers, so they're numb, so she can't really.
So I mean I hate that type of practice. We'll set somebody up to fail, and then we can prove that they are able to do this. It always, and I've seen that lots of times in lots of different situations. Let's send somebody home knowing full well that it's not going to work, because then we've got the evidence it's not going to work, and then we can place them in a care home. Well, if you know it's not going to work, why put them through that risk? What I'm really, because obviously, so when we started 7 years ago, capacity in the private sector especially, weirdly was all medical practitioners. You had to be a doctor, you had to be a psychologist, you had to be neuropsych, things like that. Thankfully, things have changed, and we're now social workers are seen as qualified as anyone else, which I always found weird, to be honest, because in any other setting, in statutory settings, local authority, NHS or anything like that, if you need a capacity assessment doing, it's a social worker's responsibility to do that anyway. It was only in the private sector it changed. From a social work perspective, from a clinical perspective, a lot of the assessments that I saw, and they have improved and things have changed, were, is there an impairment in the mind or brain? Yes, there is. There's this diagnosis. That's it. And it was almost that was enough. I mean, we literally used to see COP3s and things like that, deputyship applications coming through, and it'd be, Mrs. Smith has got a diagnosis of dementia. Mrs. Smith cannot understand because she has a diagnosis of dementia. Mrs. Smith cannot retain. And that was the report, that was the assessment. As a social worker, we're always taught when we're assessing, we're supposed to assess holistically, we're supposed to look at the whole person. I think capacity's got so narrow because of almost the legal side of it. It's time specific, decision specific, it's this snapshot in time. We're now seeing actually it's starting to broaden out, and we're starting to see this actually we need to take more into account than just this little snapshot. And I can't help but go back to your point with the diabetes about the marmalade sandwich and going out and doing the gardening, because the district nurse will have gone in, and this is me making assumptions about how their assessment went. I'll have gone in and asked set questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do this? Yeah. Hopefully they asked how, not can you, because I've seen that a lot. Can you go to the toilet by yourself? Yes, I can. Yeah. And then you say, how do you go to the toilet? Well, I climb down onto the floor, I scoot across the floor on my bum, then I bump up. There's a difference between being able to do something and doing it with a bit of dignity. I do wonder whether the district nurses sat there and asked those set questions, came to a conclusion based on that, without having the insight of, but she has a marmalade sandwich and then doesn't go out and do those 3 hours in the garden. Yeah, she's not able to connect those up. Yeah. And those little bits, those things and I think you that they could have got, if they'd actually spoken to you and to other people around her, they would have identified very quickly she didn't have capacity. Yeah. Or it's unlikely she did.
I think that in some ways, to be fair, to everybody, it has been a learning journey. I mean, she was in hospital in January, and she got referred into the diabetic ward, and for the first time I had a conversation with diabetic consultant, in fact 2 diabetic consultants, about the whole thing, and it was a really blunt and honest conversation. And the conversation was kind of like the struggle that the diabetic doctors are now having, frankly, is that people with diabetes are now managing themselves and able to manage themselves so well that they are developing dementia and therefore not able to, whereas in years gone by, to put it bluntly, the diabetes would have taken them before.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right, and that was a very honest
Dementia
conversation.
Yeah.
You know, that was a very honest.
I hadn't even thought about that. So
Very honest conversation, and you know, one of them, you know, was explaining that they have a lot. You know, a lot of diabetics nowadays will be on insulin pumps, and you know, so they don't have to dial something up. You know, just I don't even know how they work, but they're now having to kind of look at issues about when do we take the equipment away from them because they're no longer able to manage the equipment. And I could talk about this, and I've spoken about it so many times with different clinicians, and you know, but this is happening and that's happening, etc. It drives me crazy that the stock response from most clinicians is, "Oh, bless her." But anyway, but it wasn't. I didn't kind of put the whole thing together. In fact, I'm sorry. I'm going to until I read Tim Farmer put a post up.
Tim who?
But it was a post that he put up, and it was about a precedent case, and it was related to a dementia patient.
Yeah.
And I went, that's exactly what happened. It was the difference between mum could still describe all of the micro activities and processes, but she couldn't stitch it together at a macro level any longer, and that's what was lost. And it was really sad because you know, the first thing really that dementia took from my mum was the ability to know how she felt with her diabetes. So it took away her ability to manage her diabetes, kind of almost before it took away other things.
And do you know,
memory.
As I'm sat here, and I'm certainly not medical enough to say this is, but it does then throw up the curiosity of what impact did that, how the not managing her diabetes properly and becoming ill through not managing it. What impact did that then have on her dementia? Do you know what I mean?
Well, you know, obviously.
So it's
having high blood sugars is obviously going to not be good for vascular dementia.
That's what I mean. So one's feeding the other sort of thing. One makes
and a diabetic neuropathy. I'm not a clinician, so I wouldn't, you know. No. But I can understand, you know, that higher blood sugar levels is going to affect a diabetic neuropathy. The numbness in her fingers and so on.
Early signs. And going, actually, this is an issue. Being able to spot those early signs, not the mum can't remember who the Prime Minister was. I hate that mini mental state examination with a vengeance. Who cares who the Prime Minister is? I can't remember most of the time. But forgetting the big things, forgetting my son's name, that's actually, for most people, further down the road. And it's those early flags that actually, if you get in there then, it may be that the dementia isn't going to be as worse, because the diabetes, if you spot it and, oh, there's something wrong there, let's get the diabetes fixed, actually the dementia may not get as worse. So that early identification of the red flags is really important. And I know that's something that you wanted to talk about, because it's not just a memory difficulty, is it?
No.
You spotted things way back that started, that with hindsight and at the time threw up red flags for you.
Yeah. Well, it was, you know, things didn't seem quite right. When Mum moved up to be with New and my wife and I in Derby during 2020, during COVID.
Good time to move.
Yeah, well, it was a good time to move. But there are things that were not quite right, you know, quite right. And I'd said to the GP, I've contacted the GP that she was my GP, to get her registered and that sort of thing. So I sort of said, look, would you see her as a new patient despite COVID restrictions and whatever? Because there's the things I'm concerned about. And I came away from the appointment. Oh yeah, you've been telling them that I can't remember stuff. That's not what I said. Anyway.
So the doctor had said,
but there had been
your son's told us that you're forgetting.
There'd been a couple of incidents, before she came up. She arrived at my house to come to visit and driving the car up. And it's a 230 mile, 100 and whatever it is, 30, 40 miles, whatever it was. And there was something wrong with the front driver's door. Anyway, it certainly turned out that when she'd reversed the car out of the garage, she left the door open and ripped it off its hinges.
Oh, I know you told me this earlier. I thought you meant the garage door. So she put the car door.
The car door, and how did that happen? I don't know. And there's all these things, and I was been concerned for a little time. I went out for a drive with her one day, and even how do we get her to, Mum, I don't think you should be driving anymore. I'm absolutely fine. I've been, and these are the difficult, and it's really difficult. And my wife works with the Derbyshire Police on speed watch, you see, and we even spoke to the local sergeant about, keep an eye out for her and see if you could find a reason to pull her over. And when she got referred to memory services, of course they sent her down to drivability, because this is, well, how do you get it dealt with? Well, NHS have an organisation called Drivability, and they did the driving assessment and immediately told her, you need to surrender your driving licence, because we're anyway going to rewrite into DVLA to tell them that you're not medically fit. And then this becomes, I'm a terrible son, an attorney, because I've taken her car away from her.
So you've taken
her driving licence away from her. It wasn't that long ago she said to me, you didn't tell me that I could have had lessons to get my licence back. And some of these things can be quite amusing, but it's that.
I'm smiling because
blaming
on here, but I mean, I suppose with hindsight it can be slightly amusing, but at the time it must have been upsetting as well.
Yeah, it is. To
have that blame placed on you.
Yeah. When I had a carers assessment, they're good fun. You have a carers assessment determining if you can get a carer's budget, which the local authority haven't got any money to give you anyway. So it's a kind of a bit of a nonsense.
But they do push you for a carer's assessment a little bit, don't they?
It was a good exercise, and to be fair to the lady at Derbyshire City Council that did it, Sue, she was great. And we had a great conversation about things and concerns, etc.
Do you think that helped?
Yeah. Because one of the things that she said to me, funnily enough, was, you can expect to be reported to safeguarding as a carer. Because if any of the other agencies are doing their job right, they will hear things, your mum will say things about you that they should, and that was what we had with the diabetic, with the nurses thing.
Yeah.
In their defence, the sister or the head of nursing said, but we've been told that you've taken her mobile phone off her, and I said, oh really? Well, what have you done to safeguard my mum? If you're concerned about something, what have you done? So, the fact was, I didn't take her mobile phone off her. We gave her an iPhone, ostensibly because it was a way of keeping track of where she was, but she didn't know how to use it. She was always leaving it behind. And actually my nephew came up with a really good idea, and I know there's a lot of kind of stuff about these, but we put an Apple tag on her key ring.
If it's in her best interests.
Because she always took her door keys with her wherever she went. And therefore we always kind of could know where she is, because she's going to ping somebody's phone.
It's really strange that...
And it was a really good tool.
your concern. There was a slight amount, there was a touch of concern there that, I know this is contentious. The local authority can provide watches for people where they can be tracked. They've got alarm systems going in and out of the house, all sorts of different things. Absolutely, if the person hasn't got capacity to make the decision to carry one of those lifeline alarms or tracking systems or something like that, and it is in their best interest to have it, 100%. I can remember years ago I had this exact discussion with a senior practitioner, and about a month later I went back and said, this is what happens when we don't do this. And a guy had been found, he'd left a care home. Unfortunately, he'd walked off into the fields. You're a Derbyshire boy, so you know what the fields are like, the ploughed fields. You get stuck in that mud and you're in it forever, more sort of thing. And unfortunately, he'd got caught. It was December time and he passed away. If he'd had tracking on him, they would have just gone, oh, he's over there. And they found him. So how can it not be in his best interests? It's as simple as that. Yeah, I've seen them in shoes. Shoes are a good one. You can get, the insoles. You can get those with trackers built into the insoles. All sorts of different things.
Yeah. But it worked. And because one day she'd gone off to the physio because she was always very good at having about a monthly kind of physio MOT just to keep her supple and moving. And she'd religiously done that for years, because she liked having a massage and whatever. Anyway, I was looking, and Mum was supposed to be at the physio in Mickleover, which is the village across from where we are, right? But her car keys were the other side of Derby. Right? She left them in the taxi.
Oh. Yeah, tracking only works to an extent, doesn't it?
But we knew, and I called up the taxi company. They were absolutely brilliant, and the guy went back and picked her up and took her home again. He just looked after her keys for the hour. Yeah. But it worked. But the thing that what we said the conversation about, it's the Mum was having no problems, if you like, with the in the functional tests of being able to sort of retain information and analyse the information and communicate. Fundamentally, the problem was understanding.
Yeah.
And that to me has been, as I've looked at things, so often it's that checking that there is embedded understanding of the risk. When it was finally determined that Mum was going to go into a care home, I have to say again, she'd had a fall. I think that this was the time she'd had this was about a third or fourth fall. She was diagnosed as having vertigo, and she'd got postural hypertension, which means she and because of the way that she always was, Mum was like Billy Whiz. She'd get up and go. Right? Oh, so and she kept getting up and going without stopping and thinking, you see, and so she didn't. And the social worker at the hospital, I have to say, was brilliant in terms of how she helped my sister and I with the decision that we didn't want to make to put her into supported, care home. And the social worker, we had a conversation. It boiled down to three things. First of all, she said, well, she does not have the capacity because she does not understand the risk to herself of her condition. Yes. She doesn't understand the risks. And so, doesn't matter about the other three tests.
Yeah. No, that's it, yeah.
That's it. Yeah. She doesn't understand the risk. The second point she made was we agreed that if Mum wasn't as able to mobilise herself as she would, i.e. she could have been strapped down in a chair between care visits, she would have been safe to stay at home.
If her behaviours were manageable.
Yeah. I know we shouldn't say things like that, but anyway, but that was the conversation. And the third thing, which was then made the life easy for my sister. Well, easy, but helped my sister and I, was that the social worker said, if it were my decision, which it would be if you didn't have power of attorney, I would be
It's a
advising.
good social worker. I think the power of being a social worker, one of the best things that I can do as a social worker is be sorry female, I'm going to swear, I can be a bastard. I can be your bastard. It's as simple as that. And I've said this to people. I've sat there with a husband in tears because his wife has to go and live in a care home. It's the best thing for her, and for her to stay at home would end up making him seriously ill because of the level of care that she needed. And he didn't want to do it. And I was able to turn around and say, when you speak to your children, when you speak to your grandchildren and all of that, say it was me. You can blame me, because I'm going to go home tonight and still sleep well. You can blame me. And I think it's such a kindness to be able to do, is to be able to say, if this was my decision, this is what I would do. And and essentially that's what your social worker did. They turned around and said, if you don't make this decision, it's going to be my decision anyway.
Yeah.
So you can blame me. And I think it's one of the best things that we can do as a social
and prior to that, so it was probably it was only around 6 months prior to that. She'd been in hospital again, and she was actually in a care home for over Christmas, and I had asked for a care needs assessment for Mum, and the local authority sent somebody out, and she was good. Now, in terms of, she did a kind of care needs assessment with Mum, talking to Mum about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't set up exactly as it should have been according to what I understand the rules are, because I was in Mum's field of view, and as was my sister, because she was on the table on an iPad on FaceTime. Right. However, so the social worker went through all the question processing about looking after herself and caring for herself at home, etc., etc. And of course, what was then interesting is that Mum kept looking to my sister or I for the answers, and we kept quiet, and Mum kept providing the answers. And then when we got to the end of it, it sort of said, well, okay, but in the real world, this is what happened to the fish pie that got cooked for 8 minutes in the microwave. This is what happened to, so. But there again, it was then the social worker said to Mum, well, don't you think it would be a good idea if you had carers come in to support you, etc., etc., etc. And of course, that's the other beauty of the white coat syndrome, or the clinician, whatever, is that they're more likely to take advice.
Yeah.
Or I've been told I need to do this by the doctor. Oh, okay.
I mean, it can work in the favour. Oh, I hate that. The power dynamics there is horrible. I think there is a certain amount of having to do a care assessment and identify with the person, the client. I really dislike service user, with the individual, and say, this is their understanding of what they're able to do, and that's really important. And then speaking to family, friends, carers, and finding out the truth. But I think that should be a conversation with them as well, because to me, it's about them being able to understand, well, I think I do all my own shopping. Well, actually, your daughter, does she shopping on a week? Does she? Oh yeah, I suppose she does actually. Yeah, it's been a while. And if they're starting to understand it, then at the end of that, when it comes to saying, well, actually, do you think you need carers coming in? They've got all of that information, and that even if they can't make that decision at the end of it, if they haven't got capacity to make that decision, which is slightly different assessment, their understanding of it a little bit more, if they can understand it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
I think sometimes separating it from, we're going to interview her and then go and interview family. Sometimes I do. Yeah, I don't think that's,
I mean, it's got to be in that, and that's the key point, I think, in the assessment, and that was the key point in the original diagnosis, was taking the input from people that know her best. Yeah. Well, actually, this has changed. These things are different. It's the Alzheimer's Society leaflet 527 there. Changes in perception. That explains quite a lot in terms of, you know, delusions, and particularly the bit I pick up here is about blaming those closest to it. And I've had blame thrown on me. So after my father died, I started looking after Mum's finances, not because she didn't understand or never had dealt with the finances.
You see lots of people with that.
You know, and it was she made all the decisions, because I would say and she would remind, oh, it's so and so's birthday. Can you send them some and do this and do that, etc. You know, so it was doing she was doing the thinking, I was doing the execution of all these things. And you know, when she wanted cash, she would either get cash back when she was at the supermarket, or she would go to the bank. She didn't like using the hole in the wall. Fair enough. When she moved up to Derby, she still didn't like using that. But so it became, she used to call me and she says, "Oh, I'm running out of money in my purse. Can you get me 50 quid, 100 quid?"
Yeah.
Well, you know, because I've got a power of attorney card on the account, and so I just did it. But later, that became, you don't let me have access to my money.
Yeah.
Right, and this is where I went back to what when I had my carers assessment.
And that's the safeguarding.
Safeguarding. So I deliberately, on that advice, used to call it, and have called into the local authority to say, just want you to put on record that I've been accused of this.
Yeah. I think,
you know, and it's, and it was the same with, you know, you don't let me go and do my own shopping. Mum, the taxis, that's the taxi number, there's your shopping bag, you can go and do, but, you know, and it was a bit, if you don't go, every 10 days, I'm going to go down to Marks and Spencer's and I'm going to put, you know.
Yeah. It's that thing, the professionals are damned if they do, damned if they don't, aren't they? They have to take every safeguarding concern seriously, because for every 10 that aren't true because of somebody's illness, one will be true. And if they don't take all of it seriously, then they miss out on those ones that are true. And unfortunately, we see the worst cases of abuse. But you're absolutely right. The amount of times we've got somebody ringing up going, I'm the lasting power of attorney, the local authority have got a safeguarding investigation against me for this, this and this. And we'll go, oh, okay, well, you know, has it been reported to the OPG? So you can be removed as an attorney? No. Well, why not? You know, if they're concerned that you're financially abusing Mum, why have they not referred this to the OPG to get you removed? And then we find out that actually all of the allegations are down to somebody's ill and not able to really understand. Like you said, it goes from helping to you're stopping me from accessing my money, you're stealing my money, you're doing this, you're doing that, when, as I said at the beginning of this, we teach everybody lies. And if you're critical about it. But I do feel for the professionals in those situations, because they have to take everything seriously and look at everything. But you do the absolute right thing, I think. We're quite strategic in our thinking, because we're outside of statutory services. And we always say, look, if you're going to do something, ring the local authority and tell them this is what I'm going to do, because you're ahead of the game. And actually, if you're drawing out £500 because Mum needs a new bed, and you're concerned that Mum's going to say you're stealing my money, ring the local authority and say, just so you know, this is what I'm doing. And you're ahead of the game. Absolutely right thing to do is ring up the local authority and say, this is what's been going on.
But it is that foundation of evidence, you know, and that's what I picked up from, because I read one of your posts once about, what was it? That the impairment comes from the condition, not the diagnosis. The diagnosis is just a label we give it. You know, and we've had a situation in the family, you know, where my wife's power of attorney was revoked. All right, and we went, and I know that the person who revoked the power of attorney, because I saw him 10 days before he did it, couldn't string a sentence together. right? And I sent in a report into the OPG that said, you know, I'd had this conversation with that person. This is how that conversation went. He said, and I was, you know, this was the early day. I hadn't even familiarised, but that was my first time familiarising myself with the Mental Capacity Act, right? And I went, okay, so did he understand? No, he didn't understand, because he kept referring back, etc., and this and that and the other, you see. And the first thing the OPG came back and said is, do you have evidence of a medical diagnosis? So when I read your post, I thought, Ben's an idiot.
Well,
because
you're not wrong.
Because, you know, clearly you need the diagnosis, because if you haven't got the diagnosis, you can't have the impairment, because you can't have the condition.
No,
No,
I mean,
and that's then the kind of,
Yeah.
the other point is, according to Alzheimer's Society, you know, there are 30% of all those people that are living with dementia. They reckon there's 1 million people living with dementia, right? They reckon that there's 30% of living with dementia are not diagnosed.
Yeah.
Now, I said to one of the consultant psychiatrists at the NHS, where I do this kind of lived experience conversations, well, that means that there are 30% of those which by definition are lacking insight to their condition. Because if they had insight, they'd go down and get a diagnosis.
they would, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he went, that's a very interesting hypothesis kind of thing.
I would be curious to know how many of those with the diagnosis haven't actually got official diagnosis, but have got a care record somewhere that a carer has noted down,
You know,
this is dementia.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, the Capacity Act is clear, and it's being impairment or disturbing of the function of the mind or brain. It doesn't say diagnosis, and there's lots of case law, and Judge Hilda's weighed in on this, and a couple of other judges saying that a diagnosis isn't necessary around capacity. And of course, when you think about it on a real basic level, I'm sure at some point in your, did you say you were 58?
62.
62.
In a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
I think.
I hope I look as good as you when I get 62.
Yeah.
In your 62 years, I'm sure there's been one night where you were very, very drunk.
Hardly ever.
No, hardly ever. At that point, if somebody had come up and said, do you want to make an investment into this £50,000 ISA trust, you had an impairment of the mind or brain. You were blather drunk.
Yeah.
That's an impairment. That's it. Nobody's been diagnosed with being drunk on a Saturday night. Do you know what?
Yeah.
So we can't have it as you have to have this diagnosis, because an impairment can be temporary, it can be fleeting, it can be for lots of different reasons. Drugs, alcohol, it could be an illness like Alzheimer's disease. And then dementia itself isn't an illness, it's an umbrella term for a set of symptoms that's covered by lots of different illnesses.
Yeah. I think because I debated this with you over over LinkedIn, you know, and Sam Green is one of the part of that conversation with Sam Green, who I don't know. I believe he's a lovely fella, but I thought about this and thought, it's, you know, don't ask me to plaster a ceiling, because I've tried and screwed it up, and I promised my plasterer I'd never do it again. For me, the point is it's you understand in the understanding domain bit. You understand what you don't understand. It's knowing what you don't know.
Yeah.
The delusional bit is believing that you do understand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And therefore you sort of are very, very convincing, and Mum has been, and others, very convincing about what they know. And it falls, because they're very articulate.
I've sat there in assessments and walked away and gone, that guy gets all of it, knowing full well that everything he'd just said to me was absolute rubbish. But if you'd gone in without any sort of external knowledge about how that person actually is on a day-to-day basis, absolutely 100% convinced by that person. I think Fumi's waving at us because we're coming up to time. Was there any questions? No, that's fabulous. No, that's really good. What that means is we've covered everything that they wanted us to cover.
All right.
It's only when we get questions because they haven't we haven't done everything that we said we'd do. So, awesome.
Okay.
Well done.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I've been doing these kind of lived experience with the NHS and with the site, with the medical trainees doing their psych rotation, and putting the clinical diagnosis into real world experience is something that they've really appreciated, and I'm welcome to talk about it, because I think
really
it's important
for us, and I hope everyone here, because it helps you reflect on your practice. It helps you reflect on what you know, and sometimes you just get a nugget and you go, oh, that's how I can do things differently, and that changes everything for you and for every person that we then go and see afterwards. I applaud you for being on LinkedIn. I genuinely think LinkedIn is one of the best forums that exists. The amount of times where I've had conversations and been proven that I'm talking rubbish and I don't know what I'm talking about. Now, that's fine. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I can learn from that. If I'm always right, you don't learn from it, do you?
Yes.
And LinkedIn's great for that, because you do see other professionals from different fields. Like you said, Sam Green, barrister, and then I'll see a speech and language therapist and a nurse, and then yourself, all coming together, all putting different viewpoints from different professions over it, and it just means that my understanding and my practice improves. It's as simple as that. Yeah. I think a great one was we had a discussion over consent for capacity. Me and Ian Brownlow started the conversation saying, do you need consent to agree to a capacity assessment? And I said, of course you do. Of course you do. You have to consent to anything. So we argued for a little bit, and then Alex Rook-Keane, who's KC, stepped in and said, Ben, stop, you're wrong. you're definitely wrong. And I learned something, and I think LinkedIn is wonderful for that. I don't mind if people tell me I'm wrong on there. Yeah. So if I
for me as a non-professional, I'll say it again. For me as a non-professional, I think it's been great in terms of this role that I've picked up, as a carer and other things, because of tapping into these conversations that you're having with Heleth Wynne and with Sam Green and Tim Farmer and Eleanor, what's her name? Anyway, there's a number of people that go, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. And I sort of, oh, that's, and now it starts to make sense for it to me. And, it's not free advice for the lawyers out there, by the way, because what it telling me is I now know when I need, what advice I need and why I need the advice. Yeah. Right? And with something I'll talk to you now offline about. But it's for you professional guys, it's also really good marketing.
Oh yeah, I think, it doesn't do any harm, does it? No. Right, it's we've run over. Right, I mean, that shows how good it was. Thank you for joining us. Please go on to LinkedIn and add Richard as a connection, and share your wealth of knowledge, and he will share his wealth of knowledge, because that's what all of this is about. Next month we have Kirsty Findlay on the sofa. Kirsty is coming to talk to us about, I can't remember off the top of my head, and I do know this, I'm so sorry Kirsty, serious case reviews. So when an adult dies, Kirsty looks into it all. It's really interesting. Type of social work that I would not get involved with if they paid me £1 million, but Kirsty's far braver than me. So please join us for that. It's genuinely going to be really interesting, and a different side of everything that we do is to the other spectrum. We've also got Nellie On, and if I don't mention it, Fumi will start throwing things at me, in October. It's October, isn't it? Yes. Got it right for once. In October in Peterborough. If you do want a ticket, drop us an email or go onto Eventbrite and book a ticket. I don't know who we've got speaking this year because I can't remember, because I'm awful at this. But if you go onto the website, it'll all be on there anyway, or onto Eventbrite. So please get your tickets for next month, and then go on to get tickets for Nellie On. Is there anything I'm missing, Fumi? No, I'm not going to get shouted at today. No. Has somebody just come in?
Yeah. No, somebody. Oh, there go, coming all left.
A little bit late. So thank you, and if you haven't watched it in full, Spotify and YouTube, you're a Spotify star now, just to let you know. Yeah. Thank you, and we'll see you next month.
No idea what that is. Thank you.